Hello, welcome to my channel, Back to the Love. My name is Ina, and this is part 3 of growing up with my grandchildren. In part 1 and 2, I discussed why I use the euphemism growing up with my grandchildren as a way of saying I'm learning, I'm growing, and no matter how old I get, there's something new that I discovered in life about myself, the ones that's close to me, and just people in the world in general. So in the first 2 videos, I briefly did a brief introduction about myself and my family, but today I would like to add a little more. I was born and raised in Detroit, Michigan, save the last 12 years. I moved out of Detroit, and it was sad, but it was also a great move. I moved to a small town, a smaller community. Detroit, at one time, in my youth, I remember, it was 1.5 million people that occupied the city. By the time I left, it was just shy of 600,000 people. But an initiative has started that they wanted to make Detroit a world-class city again, as it was in the Industrial Revolution with Ford and all the other auto manufacturers. The initiative in Detroit 2020 would change the whole landscape of Detroit, making it safe again and making it, I don't know if it's ever really been safe, but making it safer for the residents there. It didn't happen in 2020. But Detroit right now, in 2025, actually the last few years, have been doing a lot of wonderful things. Got a whole new facelift for downtown. They have a place called Riverwalk, which is amazing. I remember that was an area that a lot of folks didn't venture to because you never know what you were running into downtown. But it's a nice place now, and it's good to know when I go home to visit family, I can go downtown now, and it's relatively safe. They had at one time taken every sport team out of Detroit. They were in suburban areas, and although they still represented Detroit, there were no teams actually playing in the city of Detroit as they once had for many, many years. But that has changed. Comerica Park is downtown in Detroit, and Detroit got some wonderful teams. You remember the Bad Boys, Detroit Pistons? That was a wonderful era of basketball. They got a lot of flack because, how they played ball. They brought a little street in with the pro, but people loved to hate them. And then we in Detroit just simply loved them. But also the Lions, they have got a better reputation as of late. They're playing good ball. They just missed their shot for the Super Bowl in yesterday's game. But you know what? They gained some respect these last few years because they've been playing some good football. And, maybe in time they will make it to the Super Bowl. We want to see that in Detroit. And I think now they have fans all over that wants to see Detroit make it to the Super Bowl. Of course, the Red Wings, wonderful team. They have won many Stanley Cups. And the Detroit Lions, Tigers, a world-famous baseball team. But, that's just a little bit about the history of Detroit. That's just something really briefly to discuss. But in one of my videos, I think in part 2, of growing up with my grandkids, I mentioned that my children attended Detroit public schools. And I did all I could as a parent to, keep them out of harm's way. And, their home was safe, a safe haven for them to be. But I did mention, in reality, they had to deal with being in the inner city. Sorry about that. That's somebody's phone's ringing. I'm very sorry about that. Let's just ignore that. Anyway, I thought about my youngest son. One day he was coming from school. He was in high school. He was taking the bus back home. And a group of kids decided to jump him. Now, he's a big guy. He always was a big guy. Tall, stocky. He's in the 11th grade at that time. So these kids came up and, gangs like to try to jump you in. See what the stuff you made out of, and if you fit their initiative, you become one of them. But that wasn't what my son was doing in life, and he had no time for that. So he got to scruffing with them, and he was holding his own for a while. It was several boys, more than 4 or 5. But this lady, at the time when he was jumping, she was driving down the street, and she noticed that kids were having a fight. And she saw my son was holding his own. So she said she went to, my son talked to her, because she went to McDonald's, came back to see were they still fighting, and they were. But by that time, the kids had overcame my son, and he was down on the ground, and they still were beating him. So she said she got out of her car, stood on the side of her car with her cell phone and said, "I just taken your picture, and I'm calling the police." So she called my son to her car and said, "Where do you want me to drop you off?" So he had to take 2 buses home. So she took him to the stop where he would have transferred at, had he taken his bus. Because he was just waiting on the bus, and the kids came up and did that crazy thing to him. But, that was what was happening in Detroit. Kids can be sometimes really cruel and vicious, and gangs sometimes can do even more harm than just a regular fisticuff that the little kids have with each other. And it was around a time where, some youth had been beaten to death. And that was, I panicked for a moment, and I was like, "You're not taking the bus to school anymore. I'm going to pick you up and take you to school every day." And we did that for a while. And he was like, "No, Mom, I'm not worried about those little peons. They just did that because they know they couldn't take me one-on-one, and they all jumped me." And I admired that. I was like, well, I want to keep you safe, but you have to still understand that you got to hold your own no matter where you go. So I relented, but then he eventually did transfer to another school. He went on for about a month. Then he transferred to another school. And he graduated from high school, and all was well. But that wasn't the end of his mean streets. I didn't have mean home, but they had mean streets to deal with. He said one day, another time he was coming from college this time, and he's at a transfer stop. He stopped to get some church's chicken. And he said this man came up to him, pulled a gun out on him, robbed him for his money, which was almost $20. I don't remember if he said that the man took his chicken, but I suppose if someone come up to rob you, they take your money, they may take your food. I have to check with him on that. But anyway, the man asked my son, "Where are you coming from?" And my son told him, "Well, I'm coming from school. I go to college." So the man started giving my son a whole background story of his life and how he was in that time and moment choosing to rob my son. And that it was something that he hadn't done if his life was more together. My son told me he just listened to the man, and he went on and on about his life. And my son said he responded because this man had a gun. So he didn't want to do anything, too crazy that would, probably lead to violence. So he said he talked to the man a little bit. And then the man realized, you're a good guy. You're somebody I would like to date my daughter. Can you imagine that? But anyway, the man eventually did go on, without harming my son. And he came back and shared that with us. So, that's part of the reality of growing up in a large city, you could run into some violent situations, even in small towns, nowhere is completely safe. But in large inner cities, it's pretty common. My other kids, they've had some situations too, but that'll be for another video if I, choose to share that. But I, just thought about my youngest son. That was pretty severe, having, a gun pulled out on him. But anyway, a little bit back to myself. In 2004, I had an accident. I was on a bike and I knew I was falling. So instead of falling and getting my, whatever bump and bruise I would have got from the fall, halfway through the fall, I decided to jump out of it. By doing that, my leg went completely around my backside and came out on the other side. This is my right leg of my left hip. I am twisted like a pretzel. Subsequently, there was a subluxation where everything was separated. And I remember being in the hospital when they had x-rayed it. I can hear the techs talking like, oh, that's going to hurt when they put her leg back in place. Because it had completely separated from the knee. And I remember it was a young doctor that came into the room and they filled me up with Dilaudid and I can't remember what else. But I saw the look in his eyes. He knew that it was going to hurt me, what he had to do. And he snapped my leg back in place. And then it really became real. All the muscles was running around like, which way do we go? What do we do? And that started a long journey of being in the wheelchair, being wheelchair bound for almost 8 months with a complete leg stabilizer on it. Because at one particular time they were talking about amputating my leg. And I was like, that is not going to happen. But I'm in the wheelchair with the complete leg brace. And I would get increments of, once I was able to start walking with a walker, I still needed my leg brace. And I would get an increment of 10 to move 10% more. So I went from complete leg stabilization to I can bend my knee like 10% with the brace. I always had to wear it when I was ambulatory. And then eventually I was without a brace. That was a long, long, long period. Lots of time at rehab. And then I was walking with the brace and a cane. And then eventually just the cane. So throughout that, this was in 2004, and I would hear, PT say, well, you might have trouble later, and things like that tends to catch up with you later. Well, this is later. Living right now, I feel that my leg never fully recovered, and I would say I have 3/4 use of my leg, how it would normally operate. For example, I cannot pivot. If I pivot a certain way, I risk it subluxing again. So I'm very, very careful and tender when I'm walking. I have to take time to turn, a certain way. And every now and then I will forget and do a little fast move, and then I'm hurting for a while, the swelling, and it's not worth it. So I do take care to be careful how I move my leg. So living with a disability, I just make the adjustments that I need to make when I'm out and about. I do appreciate barrier-free areas, something I didn't really get until I was wheelchair bound. And we would go out and I would, have to use the restroom or, even in parking spaces, if they hadn't smoothed out an area that was barrier-free, wheelchair accessible, I would look like, what is the best way to get up on this curve to go into a sad business, a movie theater, restaurants, wherever. And today, there are a few places I see that are not barrier-free. But it was a few occasions in Detroit that I ran into some issues. And my chair had to be manually lifted if I didn't get a parking space near the handicap. So, or sometimes it just wasn't, depending on where I was. Visiting family members and I'm on their street, and if they didn't have a ramp or anything like that, there was some issues. But anyway, things changed. I got better and I was able to move around. But even today, I look for the lower curves. I'm always going to try to walk up a handicap incline. And I'm happy that I'm, healed to this point. So that's a good thing. But anyway, currently today, I'm happy that I still can find ways to help others and do what I can, because I have been a recipient throughout the years of so much kindness. And I've given all that I can to others, happily. I remember what helped me to be this way, I was in the first grade. Well, before I say that, my mom used to always say, you're hard on your shoes. And because I would try to hang with my brothers because I liked their friends, and I was kind of like a tomboy, and I was rough on my shoes. And they were nice little pretty girl shoes, but I would scruff them up and do all kinds of things to them. So my mother said I should have some steel-toed boots. When I saw what steel-toed boots looked like, I was like, no way. But I remember, I guess going to school, my shoes must have looked bad all the time. Not that I didn't get new shoes, because I did. I just was really rough on them. And I remember it was a young teacher. She told me to stay after class, and she placed in front of me a shoebox. And inside it was the shoes that's called pumpkin seeds. But in Detroit, we called them white girl shoes. Why? I don't know. But I got my white girl shoes on. And I don't know if that came from seeing them on TV, because everybody had pumpkin seeds. But that's just something that we said. But those shoes were bright, and she was so sweet and nice. And I'm looking at those shoes. I am moved with so much gratitude. I was like, wow, she got me these shoes. And I was so thankful. And I wanted to take good care of them. I didn't want them to get any marks on them, because they were like a canvas material. And I was just very careful with my shoes. And that made an impression on me always, that there is a joy in giving. And, I've been told by my husband and a few people, you give too much. You don't have to give to the extent that you do. But I never agree with that, because I always believe the old adage that we heard for years growing up, that a closed hand can neither give or receive. But also just knowing how people have always been, kind to me, kind to my family. My mom lost, our dad in 1972. At that time, she had 9 kids and a grandchild. So sometimes we were cared for by local churches. Folks would come in the home and find out what size of clothes we wore and our shoes and things of that nature. Sometimes we would get food. And back in Detroit, they had a thing called clothing drive, where parents can come to the school when school was let out. And in some lockers, they had clothes set up. And they had on the outside of each locker what size clothes was in the locker, if it was for a boy or a girl. So, we would have to do that sometimes, So I know what it feels like to help, to be in need. And I also know that it feels so good when I get a chance to do something. And that's why I focus on back to the love, because I think sometimes we don't mean to be selfish. We're trying to survive and take care of ourselves the best way we can, because, let's face it, a lot of things have changed. I know when it comes to having things that we need to take care of ourselves in life, that can vary. You know, we have more than we think we do sometimes. Sometimes we really don't. I remember times when we didn't have anything. We just had Harmony grits. It was like a grit like corn. I can't remember. And I wasn't too fond of it. But we would have to eat that. But then a lot of times it would be plenty around. And when our kids, all of us would have folks come over, our kids. My mother didn't say, I can't feed you kids. She found ways to make it work in the stretch. So that left a great impression on me too. So I always say there's always enough to share, because we have more than we think. And sometimes it may not be enough, and you just have to make do. But anyway, a friend of mine just called and asked if I had some extra coffee mugs, because we just got a lot of snow here, and the shelter here, a lot of folks, needed to go to the shelter. And she asked if I had some coffee cups to donate. She said 2 or 3. I went through my cabinet. I had more than that. And it's something simple and small. It's just a coffee cup. I shop at Home Goods sometimes, Ross and the other stores, and I find really nice deals. I'm really a savvy shopper. And I find stuff 75% off, up to 90%. Like now, with it being after Christmas, you can find a lot of things 90% off. And, if you in the store at the right time, you can purchase those items for a fraction of the cost. And many times they bring the exact same product back the following season, the following Christmas season, Easter, whatever the holiday is. Those things come back around. And if you don't get it at that great opportunity to get a discount, you'll be paying full price later. So I buy things and I give things away constantly. And I also do donate, to the Salvation Army. And also there's a place in town where it's a charitable organization where they will, they have a food pantry, they have a room for clothing, and they have, things you can go in and get household items and things like that. And about maybe 8 years ago, 7 or 8 years ago, I too needed to go and avail myself to what they had, because, it was a time where I needed it. And I remember learning that it's okay to get help when you need it, but always remember to give help. So when my friend asked that I have some cups, I did. Let me show something to you. I got some nice cups, and I like cups that got a nice message on it, because, it's good. You're drinking your coffee, tea, or whatever, and you want to be inspired for the morning. And this one here, and I didn't just take out any cups, the raggedy cups, the ones I didn't like. I made sure that I went through it very carefully, and I wanted to give something up that I use every day and I liked, because I wanted to give it in love. Back to the love, y'all. Anyway, this one is called Be the Sunshine. And the reason why I chose this one, I thought, someone is in the shelter. There's no telling what they're going through. But it does not mean that they're not a good person. Circumstantially, something is going on where they need to be there. And it's been really cold. Be the sunshine. Maybe that'll help their mood. And one good mood, and one good day, one good feeling can lead to others. So I chose this one. Also, this one, the words may be backwards, but it says, be good, do good, feel good. Oh, that other one, I think it came from Home Goods. This one was the Dollar Tree. Never sleep on a Dollar Tree. You can find some great things there. Got a lot of Dollar Tree cups, and this is one. And it's a nice message. It's really a nice message. Be good, do good, feel good. This one, Christmas markdown finds. Brand new, actually. And it says, Feline Festive. Isn't that so cute? The cats and the Christmas tree on top of his head. What is that, like a little hairband in his scarf? It's too cute. Another Christmas mug. I have to turn it this way. It just says, Merry Christmas to all. Nice little Christmas town. It's really cute. And you know what? I like coffee mugs this shape. I have a Snoopy coffee mug this shape. I use that more than anything because it gives you the right amount of coffee. And I just like the shape. This one, I chose this one because of the message on it. It says, Imagine. And it has some nice butterflies. And now these are some great cups. I found these cups for hardly anything, right? But I decided not to take this one to the shelter because it has a chip there. And I think it's a little chip or something at the top. And, you know, that's a powerful message to say imagine because, you know, sometimes it's all we need is just an engine and going inside of our head to change our thoughts, that would change our actions. And we need to imagine better things so that better things can happen. But I just thought it's a good message, but I don't want them to look like, yeah, I can imagine, but look, this is messed up. So maybe they wouldn't think that. They just drinking coffee, but I didn't want to do that. So even though I wanted that one to go, I said, let me get something that's even nicer, I believe. And this is a cup. I've had this for about 2 years. And it says, Believe in Yourself. It's a really nice cup. And I just love everything about it. It looks good. It makes me feel good when I drink coffee out of it. You know, it's not too heavy, though it looks like it's heavy. And I thought, what a fine message for someone to have a hot beverage. And they maybe are not feeling good about themselves at that moment. But they get a message, believe in yourself. So that's what I'm going to take tomorrow. I wanted to do it Friday. Call and find out, to find out where to drop it off at. And found out from the recording messages that you cannot donate anything on Friday. They have days of the week where you can do it. And Monday is one of the days. So I'm going to have to bundle up because it's still cold where I'm at. It's just not letting go. So I'm going to bundle up and take it out tomorrow. And I'm happy to do that, and I don't know if it can make a difference, but I believe it can. I believe that the intentions we put on things is more powerful than we give it credit for. So that's what I wanted to share about that. Come back and see me for my next video where I will talk about what it's like to be navigating through my senior years with a disability. I turned 63 last summer, and, I reflect on a lot of things in my life, and I think, not too bad, old girl. You've been through some things, and you still got a good head on your shoulders, enough, I think, I hope, and you're going in the right direction, and it's never too late to learn, as I said before, and to grow as a human. So that's all I want to say. And this is only my third video. Well, 2 shorts, and this would be the third, I guess, longer content. So it's a little trippy for me, but I'm getting a little more comfortable doing it. So be patient. And if you stay here this long, thank you. Thank you. Okay, so I'm trying to, open up a little more. But thank you for hanging out with me. And remember, always get back to the love, because that's where the good stuff is. because it's there. Thank you so much for your time. Bye-bye.